Wobbles on a lot here with the conclusion of the round table discussion.
And that more than 95% of people who are of interest to Asia have used encrypted messages. So does that suggest the need for coercive powers and the likelihood they'll be used?
Look, it's really interesting. And firstly, we can't legislate our way out of this. There's no silver bullet in legislation, just like there isn't with any technology. Um, I think that the cooperation mechanisms is the only way to get it to at least in the first instance. And I think that number will go up from 95% to probably close to 100 eventually. And to my mind, it's just the way it goes. It's these are, as I said before, some of them are quite smart and rational people, and they'll do things to obfuscate their communication. So our agencies, dare I say, as smart as they are, and the people in there, need to start thinking of other ways to get evidence against offences of Australia. So, we all love content. Content can be king, but I mentioned metadata before. You can get an awful lot of data out of that. And by the same token, when you know some of these criminals are using your traditional chat channels, for example, and social media, but which they will do as well as encrypted ones, you can also pick up who they are, who they're talking to, the sorts of things they're doing. We all love putting a picture of our lunch on Instagram. So they do exactly the same thing. So we've got to be careful about driving them away from other channels. But we've also to remember the internet is just another public place, and logically you'd act, lawfully and responsibly and ethically online, but not all people will. So I just think we've got to put some measurement around our thinking here.
We've just been hearing Nigel Fair. He's the director of the Centre for Internet Safety at the University of Canberra. Also with us on the roundtable, Jacinta Carroll, the head of counter-terrorism policy at ASPI in Canberra, and John Lawrence, the executive officer of Electronic Frontiers Australia. John, is the carrot of voluntary disclosure, is that likely to work, or is it inevitable the coercive big stick will be employed?
Oh, look, I think, all of these large platforms and device makers have I think they have a clear commercial interest in, not being associated with terrorism, as it were, and to create, safe spaces on their platforms. So I think, I think there's a lot that can be achieved there. And I think, as others have said, this is definitely the first place to go. I think it's important to remember, and Jacinta touched on this, that, a lot of what we really need to be focusing on here, I think, is, how people are sort of getting this information in the first place. And clearly, a platform like Facebook can, and I believe is, doing quite a lot of work there around, sort of groups and dissemination and, jihadi sort of websites and so forth. So that's a place where we have to spend a kind of a lot of time as well. But, in a sense, talking about encryption all the time is really just driving more people to use it. And part of the reason why encryption has increased rapidly over the last few years is partly because of revelations about, what we might consider overreach by the NSA and others, from Edward Snowden and so forth. But also the simple fact that most platform providers have, in the last 2 to 3 years, moved to an encryption by default, setting. So, this is happening whether, the motivations for everyone moving to encryption are broad and sort of and general, and in a sense are being driven by the technology itself. So, the fact that the number of, the percentage of information that ASIO is interested in is becoming increasingly encrypted is really just a function of the fact that more communications generally are becoming encrypted.
Okay, but let's talk briefly about this global internet forum to counter terrorism. Now, this past week we've seen the big social media platforms announce this forum. Jacinta, what sort of collaboration are they talking about, and really, who would make a difference?
Yeah, well, they started some collaboration late last year in sharing hashtags. So just sharing some of their own information about what they'd identified as being extremist content. And really, the establishment of the forum is saying we're really going to pull much more than that. We're going to look at the research that each of us do, and each of them do put a reasonable amount of effort into trying to take down a variety of unsavoury content, child pornography, extremist content, and so on. But they've been doing it just within each company. So they're looking to collaborate tools, techniques, even potentially bringing together some fusion centres on that. So stepping up, very importantly, stepping up to be doing something proactive and together before the G20 meets in a week and puts otherwise what might have been its demands on it. So, but this is good. It's a difficult thing for companies to do because they are giving up a lot of their market edge and a lot of their trade secrets. These companies are all in businesses. We see them as providing services that we enjoy and that we need, but they're in there to make money, and they are doing corporate good by giving up some of the particular information they have in order to address this issue of concern. And you asked also about how likely it was that they would do these works of public good. These are all real companies. They are bricks and mortars companies with servers living in particular countries, and most of them are headquartered in the US. If they're not there, there are many significant ones headquartered in the G20 countries. They all have legal requirements to not be supporting criminal activities, and they, for the most part, particularly those big telcos, do make attempts to ensure that they are being good corporate citizens. So I'm optimistic that we will see some very good innovative progress on this activity, both the encrypted side and the extremist content side in the next few months, because we've seen that previously with issues, again, such as child sex abuse, and we've seen it with many banks in relation to countering terrorism financing.
Yeah, and we should say that raises the question about these big tech companies. Are they turning over a new leaf with a much more concerted effort to stamp out this extremist content, Jacinta, as you said, or are they bowing to political pressure? But that's for another time. Thank you all. Jacinta Carroll, Nigel Fair, John Lawrence, thanks so much for being on the round table this morning.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I think the issue is that there's not enough spies in the world to keep tabs on every individual who may, at some point, choose to have a cranky pants attack. And that's pretty much how I see terrorism. It's a temper tantrum. I'm going to do a particular video on terrorism and punishment, so I'll try not to digress too far into that field here now and today. The issue with surveillance like this is that the more you enable the spooks to collect data, the bigger the haystack their needles are hiding in. There are people who want to get rid of cash in society so that every transaction can be monitored by a government computer so that they can collect the GST, goods and services tax, more efficiently. I guess it depends on how much you want to live in a completely tyrannical, totalitarian police state. I think the idea that the city's Enry has faith in a medium of exchange is a good one. I think the medium of exchange needs to be highly durable so that if the electricity fails, you've still got the folding money and the coinage on you at the time of the grid failure to conduct business with. If you go to a cashless society, sure, the government's got a great idea of who's buying how many packets of Omo each week and who's buying bleach and who's buying hydrogen peroxide and who might be mixing a bomb. But if the grid fails, you've got no money. We're almost at that situation now with the number of people who use their mobile phones as a credit card and swipe and tap and float around. I myself am fairly dependent on automatic teller machines because I use cash, and the only place to get cash on the weekend is at the automatic teller machines. We don't have a very damage resistant or durable financial system. And the people that we've elected to lead our economy, we don't seem to be leading our society anywhere. It's the economy that leads. They're just making messes of it. Every time Donald Trump's team of cronies and supporters look as if they've almost succeeded in getting him to shut up for a few days, and they get some of his agenda to the point where you can see how stupid it is, but it looks as if it's got some momentum towards getting up. He blows himself to pieces with his Twitter box. It's like he's got the most fragile ego that anybody with a hide like a rhinoceros has ever been equipped with. I have no idea where it's going to go, but over there in, I think it was Arkansas, Little Rock perhaps, there's been a gunfight in a nightclub. I saw a bit of phone video of it. You can't see much, but you can hear that there's a lot of semi-automatic gunfire from 2 or 3 pistols in the dark. A lot of people crying and cowering and carrying on. I think I heard 25 people might have been hit. I don't think anybody's actually been killed, but the authorities are saying it's okay, don't worry about it. It wasn't a terrorist incident. It was merely an active shooter situation to the tune of a couple of patriotic citizens exercising their Second Amendment right to bear arms, apparently concealed carrying when they went to a nightclub, because they never know when they're going to feel frightened of being shot at. So therefore they've got to have the ability to shoot back in case they feel frightened. So several of these patriotic Second Amendment American citizens managed to have an altercation, and somebody produced a weapon, and somebody else produced a weapon, and somebody else produced a weapon, and then somebody got a bit of the itchy triggerness finger and they fired, and therefore they all started returning fire defensively, of course, totally defensively. There was no ideology behind it, apart from the idea that it's okay to get up and strap on a death machine in case you might want to shoot somebody later on in the day. You don't know who you want to shoot, but you might want to shoot somebody, so you better carry a gun with bullets. If that's considered an ideology, then yes, this was totally ideological killing. But apart from that, ask the National Rifle Association, this was just an active shooter situation. You know, you have to accept it in a society where everybody has the right to bear arms. For it to be a terrorist action, the active shooter has to have some kind of a wider agenda. An active shooter situation is not a terrorism act because the active shooters have no fucking agenda at all. They're just frightened. Or they're angry. And therefore they want to hide behind the muzzle of their gun and go bang, 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 and project death seeds across the landscape. No agenda at all. Doesn't fucking mean anything. They're just upholding their right to bear arms because it's AmeriKa. That's why you spell it with a capital K, because it's a very hard place, hard edge, sharp. And what's happened here in Oz? Well, the moderate wing of the Liberal Party was caught, recorded, and then leaked, and then broadcast, congratulating itself on how successful they are to be in the winner's circle, despite having been moderates all of their lives. And they apparently are trying to bring gay marriage in through the back door of Parliament, pardon the pun, and that's ripped the Liberal Party apart as the hyper-conservative, hard right-wing homophobes, dare we call it, the poofter bashers of liberalism, like Tony Abbott, have just been going bananas. So yeah, that's been the week that was. So it has. Not what you'd call an edifying spectacle. Not so that you could notice. Meanwhile, as you can see, the grass around here in winter is still disturbingly green. I've been joking about cutting the grass around my son's workshop, but I think I'm going to have to actually do it. They were forecast to have -6 degrees last night and the night before in town. Last night here, the temperature was 2 degrees, no, 1.5 last night, 2 degrees the night before. I don't know what it was in town. It was -1 on Friday night as I was driving out of town. And my minimum temperature overnight here, as I said, was 2 degrees. The benefits of living high up. The cold air sinks down into the valley floor. the benefits of living in a forest, because water has a lot of thermal mass and there's a lot of trees around here. Anyway, warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.